Hello and welcome to a new painting video. In this video I'll be painting not one, but 3 Plaguebearers. Upon deciding which skin tone I was going to use for my Plaguebearers, it dawned on me that there is no reason they all need to be the exact same skin tone. So I'll be painting 3 variants of skin, which I'll be using in my units. Let's begin, shall we? The first skin I'll be painting is going to be a variation of the classic green hue the Plaguebearers usually have. For the base coat I use Elysian Green. I watered down the paint so it's easier to apply and will blend a bit nicer with the Wraithbone base coat. Next I give the entire model a wash of Seraphim Sepia. I can always clean up certain parts later again, so no need to be tidy here. Now I will dry brush with Ogryn Camo. I apply it pretty thick here. Finally, I highlight the skin with Krieg Khaki. The reason I paint this instead of dry brushing is to give myself a bit more control in highlighting. I don't need every raised area to be highlighted. On to the next skin variant. This time I base coat with a watered down Steel Legion Drab. I give the skin a wash of Reikland Fleshshade. For a more subtle wash you can water it down with some Lamium Medium. Next I apply a liberal dry brush of Xandri Dust. And finally a highlight of Karak Stone. The last variant of skin requires a base coat of Bugman's Glow and a wash of Agrax Earthshade. Then a dry brush of Cadian Fleshtone. And finally a highlight of Kislev Flesh. These final steps are for all skin variants. I use a glaze called Lamenters Yellow to yellow up some spots of skin to make them look more diseased. Unfortunately, this glaze has been discontinued, so I'm not sure if there's an alternative for this. Then, to paint the eye or eyes, I base coat them with Wraithbone. And finally, I paint the eyes with the contrast paint Blood Angel Red. And here we have 3 skin variants. Although the base coats were vastly different, as you can see the skins now have a more subtle difference between them. It gives a little extra to the unit and it doesn't require that many extra steps to make. Now to get to some details. First I base coat all the horns, teeth and claws with Wraithbone. And then I use the contrast paint Skeleton Horde. For bigger models, I would suggest highlighting the bone with Screaming Skull, but for smaller models I usually leave it as is. On to the juicy parts. All the gore I base coat with the contrast paint Volupus Pink. I don't bother reapplying Wraithbone, as it already gives some color variance if you go over the contrast paint directly. Next, I give all the guts and gross bits a highlight of Pink Horror. All the boils and parts that show skin fat, I give a base coat of Yriel Yellow. And a highlight of some Ushabti Bone. Next I use a watered down Blood for the Blood God and with a rough brush apply that to all the guts and gore. Applying this to parts of the skin can also give some interesting textures. And finally I bless this model with Nurgles Rot. Apply thickly wherever you want. There are a lot of ways to paint gory bits. This is one of the fastest I have. With my other Nurgle videos I will show you different ways to paint gore. For the demonic weapons, I wanted to try something a bit different. First, I base coat the swords with Caliban Green. Then I apply a thick wash of Nuln Oil. Next, I highlight the sword with Kabalite Green. And lastly, I apply Nurgles Rot to the blade, to give the impression the blade is oozing. And here we have 3 sexy Plaguebearers ready to stride into battle. The skin variants work really well together, and I can't wait to have an entire unit of Plaguebearers with these different skins clumped together. The bases will be featured in a separate video where I'll explain how I made and painted all the Nurgle bases that I have. Thanks for watching.